Hello, everyone, and welcome to Broad Street Hockey. The season's right around the corner. It's exciting. Michkov, Luchenko, everything's going on. But you know what? This is the perfect time to talk about even further in the future and talk about prospects. So I brought a couple people on. Obviously, Broad Street Hockey's own Maddie Campbell and Broad Street Hockey's own Jacob Russell to talk about prospects and like what should we expect from certain players, what their season's role, what their role is going to be on their new team or their old team or whatever. Just talk about things. And yeah, and we're here to talk about the future. But before we do that, let's talk about future bets. And Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Because football season is happening, NFL is happening, stuff is going on. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and every live odds just spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of the 200K. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on the game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. That's a lot. Head to the website today, Bet Online, to get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. And talking about starting, wow, I love to talk and not mess up anything. Hello and welcome, guys. Let's start talking about prospects. I feel like after that training camp, after Flyers training camp, it probably makes the most sense to talk about a guy that we've seen a lot and we were really impressed with. Like, I think this guy, this defenseman, has been on the minds of people to maybe make the team, but there's just not really a spot for him available. This is, of course, Emil Andre. And I think, Maddie, of course, you're the most, like, Phantoms paying attentioner that I know. What did you see from Andre this season, or this preseason, rather? And, like, what do you think we should really be looking forward to going to the Phantom season?
Yeah, I think it was sort of a shame in a way. I feel like he had an even better camp this year than he did last year, which was the one that actually earned him a spot with the team to start the season. But there's too many bodies now. It is what it is. But I think everybody knows, like Laperriere was very clear about this after the rookie games, that the thing with him is he's going to play kind of a high risk style of game. And the thing is, like, they don't want him to like be less exciting, less fun, less risk taking in a way, but they want him to like not make so many mistakes with the puck. Um, so that's going to be the big thing that they're kind of trying to shore up with him this season. I think him spending a lot of time with Eric Johnson through the preseason actually kind of helped with that. Um, I don't know if he's going to have that same kind of veteran support with the Phantoms this year, but he's going to get a ton of minutes. Um, and hopefully he scores a bunch of points and fixes his stuff. Like he's too good for that league already. It feels like so. I sort of like it sucks that he's there, but
Mm-hmm.
go
And
dunk on everybody, have fun.
yeah, I feel like the thing with Andre is like it's obviously we have the Briere quote when they didn't draft Z Buyum and be like he named him as a defenseman that they wanted on the team, and but has that offensive capability like a Buyum and is on the smaller side. Jacob, do you think like Andre could realistically fit into that group, say the York and Drysdale, and could he bring a different aspect to the game than them? Something maybe that we saw more of the preseason of him being more physical and not shying away from being physical.
Yeah, I think just building off of what Maddie was saying as well, right? It is kind of unfortunate that he can't get more NHL time because he kind of deserves it at this point. He showed more poise, I think, this preseason than he has in the past. He showed more of a willingness to kind of get in the dirty areas and do the little things that are more befitting of like a bottom pair or middle pair defenseman, right? But at the same time, yeah, you do have the Bonks of the world, the Yorks, Sanheim. There are some puck movers on the Flyers defense now. Drysdale as well, as you mentioned. There are some puck movers there that I think it's not necessarily as much of a pressing need than what we may have thought last year or going into this training camp, right? I think there's going to be guys who can play that power play quarterback role. If they ever figure out the power play in general, we'll see. It remains to be seen. But there are guys who, in theory, you could have up top there playing that sort of quarterback role. And Andre is going to need to diversify his game. The unfortunate part, like what Maddie said, is he did. He looked a lot better. I was really impressed with how he looked, especially for a guy who's on the smaller size, right? And playing against a lot of AHL guys, grown men, even if they're not at the speed of NHL play, right? They're still of the stature. So he acquitted himself pretty well to that. And I think that he does deserve more time in the NHL, and it's going to have to be an injury to maybe even a specific guy. Like, obviously, I'm not wishing on a Drysdale injury or something of that nature, but I think if, say, Nick Seeler doesn't start the season, I don't know if Andre's the number one call up, right? I don't know if he is the like for like fit to replace him on a bottom pair, to replace, Risto if his injury issues flared up again, right? I don't know if he's the guy. I don't know if it's going to be Adam Ginning or somebody else. But I think he did as much as he could in the preseason without, having a 2-goal game or going end to end through the opposing team, something crazy like that. He did pretty much all he could, but there's just no spots for him right now, and he's going to have to really impress with the Phantoms and kind of bust down the door and force the Flyers to try and use a defensive structure that or a lineup of defensemen that maybe they hadn't envisioned. Keith Jones talking about Hunter McDonald, big guys in that bottom pair. It's similar to the fourth line, right? You're not going to see other sorts of guys, more skilled players in the Flyers system, really break in on the fourth line, because the fourth line is the fourth line. The fourth line will do fourth line things. That's how it is. But I liked what I saw from Andre. I think he'll be great with the Phantoms again. He was last year, and if he can just be consistent throughout the time he's there, I have no doubt he's going to get some shot in the NHL level or at the NHL level. But yeah, I liked what I saw from Andre a lot. I think he's got a future.
Yeah, I think it really is like all the consistency and just waiting for his turn. Like you said, it's unfortunate that injuries might be something that to like look for and see who he replaces, because even out of those guys, like if Sealer or Risto doesn't like aren't healthy, then I don't think they have an adequate replacement, because Jinning and McDonald didn't have a great like preseason and training camp. So it's going to be interesting, because if they're comfortable with, say, maybe having like Zamula Andre and on the same pairing, or like move Zamula up next to Drysdale, have Andre and Risto or something, if Sealer's not healthy or something like that. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, because I think he's really the next man up. And speaking of kind of another defenseman that we want to talk about, and that didn't really have a good preseason, but good enough to make us just a little more patient, and that's Oliver Bonk. Of course, he's returning to London Knights. This will be his last OHL season. Maddie, what should we kind of expect from Bonk in the OHL this year?
Are they going to put him on the power play again? Is my
I mean,
question to answer your question.
like Dickinson needs more development over there. I don't even know who else is on the blue line in London, but
Yeah. I mean, he's another one like Andre. Like, he's probably too good for that league now, but he can't graduate yet. I think he's going to score a ton of points again, and we'll see what that does to people's expectations as far as what they expect when he graduates to the pro level. But yeah, he's going to score a bunch of points in London, because that's where he is in his development. That's what the Knights are. He should get a bigger role with Hockey Canada this year, right? He's still eligible to go back, so that'll be fun. It's a weird development spot for him, because like how much more growth are we going to see from him at the OHL level? Like, how much more is he going to be challenged? I don't know, but I think he'll have a big year, and that's fun. We'll see what happens from there.
Yeah. The main concern that I have his Flyers fans freaking out if he has less points or fewer
Yeah.
points, whatever grammar, fewer points than last year. Jake, do you think they're gonna, if he scores like 50 points, or do you think people are gonna go insane?
I mean, I like again, what Maddie said. If he's on the power play,
Yeah,
London just piles up goals.
yeah.
Like, is London going to score 10 goals a game against Flint again? Like, are they going to just nuke teams for half the season? Then yeah, he'll have a lot of points. This is a problem kind of with where Bonk is now, and something I've been thinking about even throughout the preseason too, watching him. Right, I don't even know if he's necessarily too good for that level. Right, like drastically above that level, but playing with London and how London can keep the puck and how London has 2-3 lines of guys who may be NHLers at points, right? Um, I think he's too good to really benefit. He's not like a out and out offensive guy who's going to like benefit from wheeling and dealing around, the offensive zone, going end to end and stuff like that. I think he just isn't challenged enough playing in that London system as well. Like he's not put as much under stress as a guy as he would maybe in the AHL because London just has the puck. They keep possession. They got forwards who can just cycle it around to one another and who have played with each other for a really long time, and know where how to just eat up the clock, right? But with Bonk specifically, just looking at the preseason, he doesn't necessarily stand out. And I think that's almost a good thing because I don't think I even expect Oliver Bonk to be an offensive, a major point getter at the NHL level. I think he's more so just a solid middle six guy who does the job of defending first and is very adequate with the puck, very good with the puck, but he's not necessarily a guy who's going to score a ton. I'm going to bring up a name. Because I just thought of it right now. Good old Ryan Ellis back in the day.
Hamilton
Wouldn't be
boy.
bad.
Yeah.
I was thinking him and Kimmo Timonen. Like you never thought of Kimmo Timonen as an offensive guy, but he's not bad with the puck, right? And I think this year more so than points, it's going to be hard to even take anything from the season with London if they perform to the level that you think they will, because how much defending is he really going to have to do? Like intense defending, right? You send like I don't want to jump ahead of anything, but you send Jet Luchenko back to Guelph, and if he gets 100 points in 60 games or whatever, it takes a massive offensive leap points wise. I think you can take some for that and be like, okay, he's got another dimension to his offensive game that goes with just his general makeup and his overall well-rounded play. I think Bonk is pretty similar in a defensive sense as to I don't think he's gonna have a million points, but it's you really he's a guy you have to really watch to see if he's making strides or not, right? So it's going to be harder to see. I don't think you should freak out if he has less points because those guys are just a wagon over there. They're just unbelievable in London. They might be too good for the OHL.
Promote them, AHL London Knights.
I would see them against Coachella Valley.
Okay.
Maybe they give it a run. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, they should do OHL All Stars versus like
they
AHL
should.
champions.
Like more fun stuff like that. That's why I like.
Kind of fun.
I think that's more why I like going off topic here. Totally, completely taking over the show. Move Thomas from the host spot.
Yeah. It's
but that's why I like European soccer, European football so much too, because it's just random. Random teams like the Austrian. Yeah, like the Austrian third division champions are playing Madrid for some reason. It's like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, because even all the Champions League stuff, like there's all the qualifiers that are so fun to watch and whatever. Like you get, like you said, Austrian third division or like teams that are nowhere near each other randomly just have to play and just like meet up and just have to go to each other's stadium or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, more teams should be. They tried to do in hockey like with the Champions Hockey League in Europe, but it's like it feels so lackluster of just.
I don't
totally
think
off topic, but like
they didn't have Russia in it either, did they? I think
no.
Yeah.
It was just
so
like,
again,
it
it's
Sweden, Finland, the German league.
Yeah, and then Davos, Switzerland,
Davos, and the Swiss league too. Yeah, like the Central Europe teams and like Scandinavian, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, going back to London. Yeah, I think with Bonk, it's like it's I think it's exactly what Torch was saying, and it's kind of before Bonk was cut of just like he has to play faster and more like urgency. I think is a good word for Bonk, like just not just hanging out, um, and being patient with the puck. Anyways, so we're staying in London for a little bit. Another key prospect that was actually able to score a bunch of points, and I think, but still has room to grow. With London is Denver Barkey, of course. He's slight of frame, but he still scored. I think it was 104 points, 102, something like that. He scored over 100 points, of course.
102.
102, perfect. And genius. And yeah, I think his role is gonna be really interesting. Maddie, do you think like what do you want to see out of Denver? Because obviously he is the one that really needs this season. I think to show us something.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of the same thing. Like, how much more are we going to see from him when he's being propped up by everything going on in London? The big thing for me, though, is just like if he can get bigger or stronger,
Mm-hmm.
all of the hockey man isms. But he like really needs to. He still looks like a kid.
He
Um,
looks like 10, like
yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if he can just continue to mature physically, I think that's going to be a big thing. And like, I fully expect him to score another billion points, and it's going to be what it is. I feel bad, like, kind of punting on these guys, but like for me, it's like we'll see what it is when they get to the AHL.
Yeah.
That's when it really ramps up and kind of will actually matter.
Yeah, like I think I looked after Barkey scored 100 points, and like the draft plus one players in the last 10 years to score 100 points, like I think they all make the NHL, but it's varying degrees of success. Like I think Frost is obviously one that we're familiar
Yeah.
with. I think like Konechny was another one. But it was guys like, oh god, I wish I still had the list in my head, but I don't remember it at all. But it was like guys that were like decent, but then like other random like Canucks prospect or something that would like, oh god, I'm trying to remember, but I don't know. Anyways, great, great side conversation. Yeah, I think with Denver it's going to be really hard because I think he was also I think a product a little bit of Easton Cowan, obviously like OHL MVP, Easton Cowan. That right.
Yeah. He's a most
Um,
outstanding player, or I
yeah,
don't know if they call it
whatever that
MVP, but he
trophy's
was the
called.
best player in the OHL. Yeah.
Yeah, and he should be on the Leafs roster, I think, at the very least, or return a little bit later.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think he's still on the Leafs roster. So, um, yeah, I think it's gonna be really interesting. I think with Barkley, there's not a whole lot to talk about other than just like get bigger, be better in all three zones, and score the same amount of points. Um, and I'm moving away from the forward position a little bit and away from guys that are a little bit closer. Or actually, no, this is a guy that's closer. Alexei Kolosov is next on my list. Obviously, there's the whole situation going on over there. He is, of course, down in the AHL with the Phantoms right now. We do not know if there is whatever is made of certain reports of him going back to Minx or something like that in a little bit. But he's here for now. He's with the Phantoms. He's starting training camp there. He's going to be starting the season there. Um, Jacob, do you think what do we want to see from Kolosov to start the season? Like, obviously, that's a big talking point of the goaltending situation in Philadelphia, but um, in Lehigh Valley, like, what is Kolosov's kind of role, and what do we want to see from there?
I personally, the only real thing that I want Alexei Kolosov to do in the first 2 months of the season is make me forget that Cal Peterson exists. Like, just don't. I feel like I said this 15 times. I don't want to see Cal again. Okay, Cal's done. Cal needs to be the backup in the AHL until his golden parachute runs out and he can go and I don't know, sell cars in LA if they still like him
Jesus.
or something. I don't know. I simply put, he is not an NHL. I don't even think he's an AHL caliber goalie, to be honest, anymore. But on Kolosov specifically, I think in the preseason he looked good. I think his positional play, I think, was a bit more steady than Ivan Fedotov, right? Obviously, Sam Ersson, I think we could agree, looked like the best goalie. He is the best goalie. He's going to start, so I hope he's the best goalie. But obviously, Fedotov, a lot different makeup, being so massive that he does play a different way. But I think Kolosov did look steady. He played that game against the Islanders basically. I don't know if it was the Islanders' full roster, but it had a lot of NHL caliber players there, and he looked pretty good. Um, a lot of these KHL guys, I think it's more so just about them adapting to playing, like just that slight increase in pace and power of the shot, and sort of just adapting to that. I think that the positional stuff is all pretty once they those types of players come over from Russia. I think that's pretty well sound. But for Kolosov, I'd like to see him by the end of the year starting in Lehigh Valley. I think maybe I think that's what he should want too, because that gives him the best chance to jump into the NHL whenever there's a chance. If there ever arises a time when they need to switch up the tandem in Philly, I think that's the only way he's going to be able to do it. There's going to be more competition coming. We're going to talk about that later, but there's going to be more competition coming for the job that Kolosov wants. And I think it's just up to him to really back up, put all of the stuff that happened in the offseason behind him and back up his talk and just sort of go out in Lehigh Valley and look like a goalie who's too good for the league, right? I think that's what he's going to have to do. And if he does it, we're going to have a bit of a discussion over surrounding, where he ends up going, whether or not he's going to be a trade chip or something in the future. But he's got the potential to do it, and I think he acquitted himself pretty well in the preseason overall.
Yeah, I think what we saw from him gave us a little bit of hope that he maybe, because he's been so bullish about himself and so like I deserve the NHL shot. I think maybe he does. Maybe he deserves at least like a couple games of a backup role, but that's not happening with the Flyers right now. And honestly, it might be like this thought while you're talking about Peterson is like maybe it's like a very good silver lining of him a little bit holding out and forcing the Flyers to sign Makiniemi, that now Peterson's basically like the third string goalie in the AHL and Makiniemi's the backup and Kolosov. So now the Phantoms actually have like a decent amount of goaltending talent other than
Yeah.
like depending on Cal to do something. A little bit of positivity came from Kolosov being a little baby. Moving on to another player, I'm actually staying with the Phantoms. I think this is honestly a player that is really intriguing to me because I hated the pick. Thought it was very one-dimensional player. Didn't really do a whole lot for me. But he kind of proved me wrong a little bit last year, and he improved a lot and actually produced some points. This is of course Samu Tuamala. Maddie, obviously watching the Phantoms last year, what did you see from him, and what do you expect him to be in a similar role for this year, or more talent around him, or like more power play time? Like, what do you really kind of expect from Samu?
Yeah, I mean, I think his role is going to be pretty much the same. He was getting a lot of minutes, top power play time last year. I think the team around him is a little bit better, which is nice. Um, but yeah, it's going to be, I think, an interesting year for him. Um, he was really good to start the season, but kind of dropped off when the quality of his line mates also dropped off. So um, I think still my big question for him this year is like, can he do a little bit more to drive his line, and can he make it clear that he's not just like hanging out, being the third best guy on his line and profiting from, you know, the very good play of his line mates. I still think he has a lot of developing to do. I know people were really banging the drum for him to get a look with the Flyers at the end of the season last year before he got hurt. And I didn't really think he was ready for that, or it wasn't super clear that he deserved it just yet. Um, yeah, I'm really interested in seeing what he does this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really intriguing to see his development. Do you think, Jacob? Do you think like Do you think Samu, like, what do you think his spot on the Flyers roster? Say if like if people are banging on the drum even harder and say like the Flyers really want him kind of up here, what do you think he'd ultimately be?
The thing about Samu is like I don't ever know if he'll be much more than what he is. Like Maddie says, yeah, she wants to see him kind of drive his line more. I just don't think that's him. I just don't think he's got really like that the sort of traits in his game to ever really drive a line. Maybe at the AHL level, right? Like against top talent at the AHL level, he can maybe drive a line, but uh, in the NHL, he's already 21, uh, old, washed. Um, but at the same time, it's becoming harder and harder to me for him to really get a spot anywhere almost because like you look at the top two lines, they're pretty much set. The top two lines are top two lines, unless there's injuries. That's what it's going to be. Obviously, Joel Farabee could slot in here and there. You move guys around, but the general nucleus of those two lines are there. And then you get down to the third line, and it's like he's got a lot of work to do to catch guys like Farabee, to catch guys, in that sort of position, right? And even if you're comparing him to someone like Noah Cates, right? Noah Cates probably won't start the opening night on the opening night lineup. He'll be on the roster, but he won't be on the opening night lineup. And Samu just doesn't bring as much. He doesn't have as many tools in his toolbox as Cates does. Cates kind of does everything but score, and Tuamala is basically just skate, shoot, skate, shoot. He's skates really quick and he shoots really hard. That's kind of what he does. He's gonna really need to up his goal total. It's just point total in general in the AHL for him to really get a look, because at the end of the day, it is hard to get points in the AHL. Like, it's not an easy league to score in. But at the same time, you got to do something. He's gonna have to do something to push him into that top 9 sort of conversation, because again, I just don't see a world necessarily where he's the guy that comes in for Garnet Hathaway, like fill in that sort of role. I think he's competing for more so like those up the lineup minutes, and I don't know if he'll ever get there. He's really going to have to improve just his playmaking in general, and if not being the third best, the best player on his line, at least the second best, right? Like at least someone who has some like supplementary playmaking to a line, something like that. Or else he's just kind of going to be a tweener, right? Like he turns 22 in January, and then again, the Barkeys of the world are coming imminently, right? Luchenko seems to have already jumped him in the pecking order. And if he hasn't this year, he definitely will going into camp next year, right? So as a winger, it's going to be tough for him to really make a splash in the NHL. I think he's one of those guys that's going to need like just a random like 2 to 3 game preseason stretch, like maybe next year. He didn't have it this year, but maybe next year if he really, finds a groove in a short sample size and the coaching staff takes a liking to him, maybe that'll do it. But I don't know. It's tough for him. It's really going to be tough for him. It might just end up being organizational depth at this point. I mean, the scouting report on him has not really changed, is what I'm going to say, right?
Yeah, like he scored 15 goals, 43 points total in 69 games last year for the Phantoms. I think it's a decent rookie season. So, but if he was like say a point per game this year and developed, like obviously like I think a lot of I hear in reading NBA coverage and basketball coverage in general, this is a big thing, but it's like a secondary skill or like a third skill. Like you could be a catch and shoot guy, which is basically like you just said, Tuamal's a skate and shoot guy. But if he developed like he's decent on the boards like Forrester, or if he's a decent forechecker like Luchenko, or he's more agile than north south speed. Like Tippett was, I feel like Owen Tippett was labeled that in his draft year, but he developed all these different skills.
Yeah.
Like being able to actually be more defensively aware and all this stuff, and positionally and everything like that. I think Tuamala needs to work on a lot of things like that and just be able to grow. I think he's the one that like I think the Flyers would rather have, say, if like Lawton and Cates are injured, or no, say like Brink or Farabee are injured, so the third line wingers kind of thing. They'd rather just like promote Hathaway and then bring up a Lixell or a Richard on the fourth line, than have Tuamala replace Brink or something like that. I think they'd rather have that, just to keep Tuamala cooking and then see if he goes from here. I think it's a really big season coming up, maybe the biggest out of all the prospects, honestly, to really make a stamp, or he's a trade piece. That's the real breakdown of things. Next is a prospect that I think is going to be, again, a lot of Phantoms guys that are on this list, just because I think a lot of guys are transitioning into pro hockey from good, solid Flyers drafts. This is Hunter McDonald, of course. Big, rugged, organizational favorite goal defenseman. Maddie, what do you expect to see from McDonald's rookie season? Do you expect a lot of points? Do you expect what, like, more eye test stuff? Like, what do you really want to look for?
Yeah, he's definitely more of an eye testy guy. Like, there's not a whole ton of offense to his game, but like, he's kind of got to work on everything. Like the physical part of his game, he's got it down. We've seen it, but like his play with the puck, his skating still needs a little bit of work. Like, and that seems like something the coaching staff down in the AHL already knows. Like, as much as management likes him, they're like, yeah, he's still really raw, which is comforting, I feel like, in a way. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm not expecting it to be a super smooth transition for him, which is fine. That's a big jump to the AHL, but yeah, he's gotta work on everything, I think.
Yeah, like even so last year he played for Northeastern, obviously, 23 games, 1 goal, 6 points. And then he made his transition into Lehigh Valley, able to play 11 games, and then scored 3 points in the regular season. Yeah, I don't expect. It's another guy where it's like, I think, like Barkey, it's just like, just develop, honestly. Like, it's a guy that you're going to stay where you are. Even though the team loves you, I think it's just going to be like, you're here for the whole year, get used to it, and then maybe next year you could start banging on the door to develop into a Steeler or Risto role on the team to balance out all the guys that they have that are so speedy and so better with the puck. Yeah, I don't think there's much more with McDonald. I think it's going to be interesting to see. I didn't hate his preseason, but yeah, there's not a whole lot to go off of. One guy who honestly played so well in the preseason and training camp that he earned an entry-level contract with Spencer Gill. Obviously very tall, 6'4", drafted just this year in the second round. The Flyers traded up to get him at 59th overall. Played out of the QMJHL, Rimouski Oceanic. That was a terrible pronunciation. Jacob, what do you think of my pronunciation, and what do you think of Spencer Gill?
It is better than mine, probably. Rimouski? I don't know.
Rimouski Oceanic?
I don't know. I like Gil. I like Gil a lot. Like, I think he's just a more, like, I understand how the organization views McDonald as like sort of this bottom pair, just bang and crash. If you can mold him into enough of a skater and a puck mover to, sort of get by, then yeah, he'll be a good bottom six guy. I think Gil just has sort of all of the surrounding skills kind of more developed even at a younger age. Obviously he hasn't played in the AHL, so you don't really know. You can't compare them like for like, but 6'4", 185, gonna need a lot more weight on that frame probably before he really starts to play with men later on in his career. But with Rimouski, I think he's just gonna have to be really show himself to be a number one defenseman who can dominate that level, really use his reach, really use his puck moving ability. I don't necessarily need to see points from him or anything like that, but it's more so just try and grow into your height, try and grow into your frame, and then from there you can again get him into the Flyers organization and then mold him sort of into what you want him to be, right? Um, I think we have some pretty good examples of like the different sorts of big, tall guys that you can just kind of have around on the team and how you can develop them differently, right? Like Rasmus Ristolainen, people forget coming out of the draft, it's very highly touted, very highly touted. People thought he could move the puck. People thought he was decent offensively, and he also had that bang crash ability. He was huge at that time, right? Especially for who he's playing against. Um, and then you have the flip side of that, which is like a Travis Sanheim, big guy. He has grown into his frame, and he's not, a shrinking violet or anything. But he's not. That's not his game. Isn't that sort of that predicated on physical play. So with Gill, I just say that I was pleasantly surprised by his preseason. I thought he acquitted himself well. I keep saying acquitted. I keep saying acquitted. I'm
He
like a
acquitted himself.
judge. But no, I think he's gonna have a really bright future. I really like how he has already shown himself against NHL, AHL level opposition, and I think if he just dominates in the queue, um, he'll have another good crack at preseason next year and camp next year. Not maybe to make the team, but to be a guy who sort of pops up on the organization's radar as somebody for the future. I think he's got a lot of potential to do that because the skills, like the actual puck moving skills, I think are already there.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really a take a really good season for him to like get noticed a little bit, but I think he can probably do that with in Rimouski. I think if we're seeing a point per game kind of out of him because he scored 46 and 65 last year. Again, he's really young. He's even younger than or I think he was just a couple days older or younger than Luchenko. They're around like the same age exactly to the day. But I think if he is able to, like you said, grow more in his size and then be able to provide a little bit more physicality in junior, then I think we could really kind of hang our hat on him becoming an NHL talent eventually, and get really excited about him like we're kind of excited about Bonk and all those guys. Speaking of Bonk, here's another onomatopoeia name. Alex Bump. Bonk and Bump. Perfect. 20-year-old playing for Western Michigan. Oh my god, my throat. Jesus Christ. Cut that out. Whatever. Fifth round pick, and he is kind of seen as a dark horse prospect, honestly, out of the Flyers. Like, not a lot of people know about him, but he was managed to score 36 points in 38 games in his first year in college hockey. Maddie is again college pay attentioner. What do you like from Alex Bump, and what kind of in his sophomore year at Western Mich again? What do you want to see from him?
Yeah, I think I'd like to see him still take another step forward in the offense, but he's kind of a like an interesting utility type player, I think. Um, but yeah, it's I know the organization is a big fan of him. I think at the end of development camp, Flair said straight up, like, I think he's a pro player. So I think it's very possible that this is his last year in college.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't have a great sense of like how good Western is going to be this year collectively as a team in that conference, but yeah, just if he can continue to, I think, particularly polish out the offense, like take a step forward there, because like his play on the boards, his puck moving is fine, his skating's good, just like kind of tinkering with his game, but like yeah, I don't really have any big things that I need to see him working on because like his game's already coming together pretty nicely.
Yeah, like he just needs to actually take the next step in pro hockey and kind of develop that way. Do you think he could be if the Flyers are like, oh, we're set on wingers, like we're good? Do you think that he could develop into more of like a third line guy Like, do you think he could like provide a little bit of defense and care more about that side of the puck, and be able to sit comfortably in the bottom six?
Yeah, I think so. It's gonna take still a little bit of work, and
Right.
I imagine that'll come with like at least a full season in the AHL once we get there. But yeah, I think certainly that's a possibility.
Sick. That's perfect. Because yeah, I think obviously like we're talking about Tuamala and all these guys that I think are very like even Rizzo, and I don't have Rizzo on my list just because like
Yeah.
he is what he is.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see him in with the Phantoms, but I don't think that he's not like developing another tool to his game at his age. I think it'll be interesting to see the Flyers like really try to get more prospects to fill out their roster because they're obviously locked in on a lot of guys. Like especially if like if Farabee's still going to be here and if Brink takes another level and then you get Tippett obviously is locked in, Konechny locked in. Like there's guys that are just obviously Forster like could just be a Selkie winner eventually. Like it's guys that will yeah, I love that. Guys that are like already here. Like you have six wingers that are NHL level and could play well and are young and are going to be here. So it's like these guys either like need to become centers or they're trade pieces if they're like one dimensional guys.
Yeah, it's a lot of these college guys too, right? Like you even talk about Rizzo. I think he was a junior when he left, right? He was a
I
juniors
think
last
so.
year, and Bump is going to sophomore season, right? So even if he does go out there and like play really well, up his point total, take on a bigger role at Western Michigan, that's the problem is because now you're sort of locked in your mind as a 21 year old. He's going to be 21 in November, locked into being the guy on offense, right? You spent all this time being very good offensively, trying to score as much as you can, trying to drive offense for your team, and then with the Flyers in the NHL, I doubt you're really ever going to have that chance, right? Even with the Phantoms, there's a something to be said that he probably won't have that chance, at least unless he really jumps off this year and becomes one of the better players in the NCAA or something like that. It's going to be tough for him to jump in and play that same role. So he's going to have to develop around just sort of the scoring role. He's going to have to develop out his game a bit more, and then we'll see if he maybe tries and does that this year, or maybe when he gets hopefully his entry level and the team sort of looks at him and says, okay, this is what we're going to need you to do to fill a role for what we need. And that transition, I think, for a lot of these guys is what's going to be crucial, more so than just their raw point total numbers in inferior leagues, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, like who cares about if you're scoring up and lighting up college unless you're like have a complete game. Um Speaking of a guy, well, this is a I can't even segue between these two players. Um this might be the prospect that we're talking about with the highest ceiling, honestly. We're talking about players that will fill in roles and fill in here and there, but every team needs a starting goalie, and every good team typically needs an elite starting goalie. Of course, we're talking about Igor Zavragin. Not a whole lot was talked about him. Like obviously he's playing well in juniors last year. It's like okay, but it's the MHL. Jacob knows all about the MHL, how nasty and terrible league is, and some
down
teams
in
are
the
just like
gutter.
icing. They're icing 15-year-olds that have never seen a puck before, and they're like getting demolished 11-0.
Yeah.
And then yeah. Anyways, so but entering this year on he got traded to SKA St. Petersburg, Michkov's old team, and then he got loaned to Sochi, another Michkov path. And he started this year. He has 5 starts, 226 goals against average, and a 938 save percentage at 19 years old in the KHL. Those are numbers that are like Ilya Sorokin, Igor Shesterkin, Andrei Vasilevsky. Like you're talking about these Russian great players of the modern era. And this guy through 5 games, just 5 games, we'll be patient, has looked similar, had produced saves and been that kind of guy that a team could depend on. And maybe you're talking about a starting goaltender at 24, 25. This is 5 years from now, but you're talking about this guy. Jacob, obviously, Russian watcher sometimes. What do you think of Zaragan, and kind of what do you? I already touched on it a little bit, but what do you kind of want to see from him?
Yeah, da. So I've actually, I really was excited to talk about Zvragin because I think I've always been higher on him than Kolosov. Like when Kolosov came over, obviously it's always good to have another option and things like that. But Zvragin is so young and so raw, but he's never really like everywhere he's went, he's been very good. He's never been had really a rough season, save for like the Russian U18s and things like that, right? But in the MHL and the VHL, it's just another Russian junior league. Both pretty rough standards of play, to be honest, as Thomas was saying. It's both pretty rough standards of play. It's rough for goalies too, though, at the same time, right? Because there are a lot of defensive breakdowns. There's a lot of just random 2-on-0s where guys just appear out of nowhere. There's 6 guys on the ice. There's 4 guys on the ice. Like it's kind of a mess at times, right? But that start with Sochi, if he can continue to do that for not even a full season, even if it was just half a season, maybe even get back to SKA, right? Get back to St. Petersburg and really get back to the good teams. Sochi, not as much, they're a little rougher, as we saw with Mishkov before. Mishkov, right? It's Mishkov. Mishkov. I got to get that in my head. I want to say Michigan, I think. But as we saw with Mishkov before, it's tough for Sochi to really get going. There's kind of a hierarchy in Russian hockey. So SKA and CSKA Moscow and teams like that, those are the more prestige teams that you want to be on. So if he can get back to SKA and continue these numbers, like I can't imagine he'll be with Sochi much longer if he continues to keep these numbers up, even if he is young. Again, as it's kind of been like just a theme throughout Russian hockey of the last 20, 25 years. The young guys, it's starting to change, but the young guys necessarily don't get as big of a chance, even if they're putting up numbers in the KHL or with the national team setup. They look for more veteran options, which makes sense. But I'm really excited with Zvragin start this season. I hope that he can really turn it on here and get back to SKA and continue to put up numbers behind a better team. Because 938 save percentage. He's got a losing record. He's 2-3 on teams 2-3 on the year.
Right.
He's got a 938 and a 226 goals against. I don't even know that's possible, but at least he's prepared for his future potentially. But yeah, in the VHL, the MHL combined, those two 26 games across those two leagues, 944 save percentage. Like you can't ask for much more. You can't ask for much more. And he's, again, like you said, super young, super raw. If he's already got he doesn't turn 20 until August 23rd. He's got a long.
I actually didn't know how late his birthday was.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
He's got a long runway in front of him. Like this guy, yeah, he might be somebody to watch for the future. In my opinion, I'm really high on him.
Yeah, he's eventually going to be the prospect that like other teams' fans will know. Kind of I think that's like a level of player that he can be. I did some quick math, just looking at his saves in games. He is facing more. He has to make more saves per game already with Sochi than he even did in the VHL and MHL. He's averaging around 30 saves a game, and then in the VHL, I think it was. I even forget the number that I just looked up. I think it was 27, and then MHL was like 28 or something like that. Again, it'll probably average out to be around down there, but he's having some crazy performances in the K like so far. It's a little nuts. It's eventually I think he'll be a player that we're all very excited about, and I think when he went to SKA, I think it's a 3-year contract, so he'll be there with at least until the 22. So you're talking about maybe like Kolosov's age coming over kind of thing. And yeah, and those older Russian goalies that I mentioned didn't make their NHL debuts until they're 24, 25, and then they're elite right away, and then off to the races. And with the Flyers' goaltending situation kind of open, that timing could kind of match up. Now, next to a guy that's a little bit of a newer prospect, but he's a little bit older, and I think in a very interesting situation. Um, Noah Powell obviously led the USHL in the goals last year. We don't have to touch him a little bit, but he's obviously going to Ohio State this year. Going to be a freshman at 19 years old, so he's a little bit older. But Maddie, what do you kind of expect from Powell being a Buckeye?
Um, we'll see. I mean, that's a big adjustment,
Mm-hmm.
making the jump to NCAA, even as an older, more physically mature player. Um, I don't know that that Ohio team is like great, so I kind of want to like manage expectations with him. I don't think he's going to be like absolutely lighting the world on fire right out the gate, but you know, I think he's an interesting sort of toolsy guy. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens there. I think,
Mm-hmm.
he could get some offense going at some point, but it's, yeah, I don't know. I like him a lot, but I think he's going to be one of those like longer development path guys. So, I don't really have any expectations for this season. Like, we'll see what happens and go from there. But yeah, that's a
Yeah, I
terrible answer, but like, I don't
no,
know.
it's a guy that they just drafted and was known for scoring a lot of goals in the USHL, and then from there it's like we'll see kind of thing. Like, yeah, I don't, and I'm looking at the Ohio roster. There's a total of one, two, three, four, five NHL prospects, five drafted players, and the only other one I recognize is Gunnar Wolffontein, the Preds prospect, just and probably just because of his name, and that's the only thing. Yeah, I don't see a lot of talent on that roster. It's gonna be really interesting, and I don't think there's really a whole lot much to say about Noah. I think he's physically ready for college hockey, but I don't think that there's gonna be. It's just gonna be see if he can get the points. Maddie, I want to return to you for this next player because I think obviously just being paying attention to the Phantoms, Elliot Denoyer is a very interesting guy because he had that crazy rookie season and then has kind of dropped off from there. Do you think this season is a very make it or break it? Like, do you think he could be potentially? I don't know what his contract situation is like. He might need a contract at the end of the year, but do you think he could be at risk for being like unqualified if he's not up to snuff?
Um, it's probably not that dire,
Hmm.
I think. But it definitely is kind of a make or break years for him at the same time. Like, um, it really seemed to like they were trying to put him in the best possible position to succeed. Like he played with Mishkov in the first rookie game. They're giving him a lot of minutes
Mm-hmm.
with good line mates, just trying to get him going again. Um, so clearly they still like his potential and they're trying to figure out what the hell happened last year because God, I don't even know. Um, yeah, I don't even know what I expect this year from him. Like I said, the team is going to be better, and I think that helps. He's going to have some better line mates to work with, but like he's going to need some coaching at that level to like fix his shit. But yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know. That's a really tough one. I'm hoping, you know, he wakes up one day and is like, I know how to play hockey again. I'm going to be okay. It's
yeah.
like how good he was his rookie year didn't come out of nowhere. I have to think he's going to figure it out again eventually. He's definitely a little bit at risk of getting kind of lost in the shuffle, but
Mm-hmm.
it has to get better.
Yeah,
It
I
can't get
mean,
worse.
for someone to he scored 44 points in 65 games his rookie year and then went cut it in half 22 and 63. Like it's that's a huge dip in production, and especially going from 23 goals to just 6. Maybe it was just a shooting percentage thing. Maybe it was just being unlucky. But man, like that's just brutal. I think,
It's
and I
rough.
did I did look it up, and he's an RFA this upcoming summer, next summer, I guess. So yeah, there's kind of a risk there.
Yeah, I I love a Moncton Wildcat. I really do. Going back to good old Jonathan Drouin,
Oh,
Nathan McKinnon, Martin Firk. Remember Martin Firk?
you
Nobody
mean
remembers
Moosehead?
Martin Firk.
You mean
Yeah.
Of
Moosehead? Yeah,
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Moosehead Martin Firk was great.
Man, I remember the Mem Cup with McKinnon and their Seth Jones was up against him, and he made that
Uh,
play because they were battling
yeah.
for first overall. It was like, who's gonna do it? And then McKinnon deked out Seth Jones, and they're like, he's first overall pick, and yeah, look
Uh,
at them.
God. God.
Anyways,
Anyways, I want to go back to Noah Powell for 2 seconds. Just
okay,
give me
yeah,
two
sorry, I didn't.
two Noah Powell seconds. For some reason, I ended up at the in my day job. My day job, that's barely a job. I ended up watching a lot of Dubuque games. Noah Powell, 100% the best player on that team. It's not
Oh
even
yeah, I
close.
should have. I think I knew that. I should have. Yeah.
Yeah, like he was fantastic in the games that I watched. I think he broke the Dubuque single season scoring record, 41 goals, and he's also hearing impaired as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really good story. He's a really well liked guy. I would like to see him get a bit of a shot. We'll see what happens at Ohio State, right? And this isn't football, so uh, you know, I don't know how they're gonna do necessarily, but yeah, no, I think I like Noah Powell. And getting back to Denoyer, I think after that cup of coffee out at the Flyers and
Mm-hmm.
the stint in Lehigh, the full season he had in Lehigh, where he had the 44-point season. I think everyone thought that he was going to be competing um, for that job the upcoming season, and it just didn't really happen for him. Maybe that contributed a bit to where he's at right now, but he's gonna have to build himself back up quickly because if he doesn't, again, we've been talking about the whole time. There's not a lot of space now. Like if there's one thing the Flyers can have now, it's depth forwards. They have depth forwards. So he's really gonna have to turn it on, or else yeah, it might be the end for him in Philly.
Yeah. So I just looked up his shooting percentage out of curiosity because Elite Prospects doesn't have it, but the actual AHL site does. So 18% scored 23 goals in his rookie year. 18%. I feel like that's not
Uh,
consistent. Went down to 5.7.
okay, that's also not.
So it's not
Those are
great at all.
very far extremes.
So if we're talking about a player, and again he played 2 fewer games, but also shot. I'm trying to do the math here. I'm so bad at math.
You're more brave than I am. I
18,
haven't even tried.
18 less fewer shots, but I think obviously AHL doesn't keep time on ice, so it might have
No.
been just a thing of like he played fewer minutes, so obviously he took fewer shots. Um, yeah, I think this could be a big bounce back year for Denoyer. Obviously 5.7% is brutal, but 18% is also like not. He won't do that again. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Um, Next player on my list, I think is the last player we want to talk about a lot or significantly, and then we could just do kind of a lightning round of like good, bad, thumbs up, thumbs down guys. Carson Bjarnason had a really good Flyers training camp in preseason. He was kind of viewed further down in the depth chart in terms of like hyped prospects. Like some people loved him, but some people were like, well, Zavragin's better, Kolosov is better and older, so like we'll pay attention to these guys more. But he's 19, I think just turned 19. In June. And so far he's playing pretty well for Brandon. He has 2 games, 931 save percentage. Obviously it's just 2 games, but um has made 67 saves, so that's a lot in 2 games. Like he seems to be playing pretty well. But Maddie, what do you think? Do you kind of want to see from Carson?
I mean, I want to see him actually looking like he's kind of dominating in that
Mm-hmm.
league because last year I thought he was just okay. He was pretty good, um, which is frankly not enough considering the guys that he's going to be up against. I mean, he signed an ELC already, so like he's gonna be around for the foreseeable future. But like he's another guy who, if he doesn't take a pretty significant step forward in the next year, like he might kind of get lost in the shuffle here because like there's a lot of bodies around.
Yeah, like I think it's really telling of if he can do it again because obviously last year, not do it again, but just improve because last year he had a 907 save percentage. That was his draft plus 1 year, and it was fine. It was he was very much fine. But I look at another player, another goalie that was drafted higher, more hyped, played in the WHL in Sebastian Cossa. I think he was more hyped. Obviously, like I just said that, but I think he is now turned pro and he's able to establish. Now he has like one ECHL season under his belt, another AHL season last year, and he's playing the AHL again. I think he's like going to be banging on the door in Detroit soon. But he's kind of a similar path because on his draft plus 1 year in the WHL for the Oil Kings, he had a 913 save percentage in 46 games. So 907, 913. And then just because of when he was born, he was able to go to the AHL earlier. But Carson is coming into now, which will be his last season. And if he could maybe have like a 920 plus save percentage, I think it'll be pretty good. Jacob, I know you were watching him for your day job. What did you kind of see in his early games?
Yeah, so I did his it was the first game of the WHL season, I think, against Saskatoon. So they lost that one 4-3, and he had an 895. He stopped 34 of 38. One of them was a guy wide open backdoor, like no defenseman within 10 feet. The other one he got knocked over before the puck went in. So there's that as well. The thing I just was trying to watch his sort of movement in the net, right? Because not that I can really evaluate goalies, not that anyone can really evaluate goalies, especially in the CHL. But I like his economy of movement. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't go too far one way or the other. He's very steady in the net. I think that's something that showed in the preseason as well. He looks like he's pretty anchored to the crease and isn't all over the place, which is good. Like last year, again, he is very young. CHL is, can be at times. WHL can be a fire wagon league at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of up and down, but this year I'd really like to see him. I think his coming out party could be the World Juniors. I think if he starts for the Canadian World Junior team, which I'm not sure he's really in the running for the Canadian starting goalie, it's kind of always a bit of a up in the air thing. The Canadian goalie thing has always been a bit shaky at times, but he's going to have a shot at it, and I think he's probably one of the front runners. He played the U18 tournament, so I think there's a chance. Now, with him, I think it's just more important to see him have a dominant season in Brandon, just be the starter and put up a bit better, counting stats wise, some better numbers, whether it be the save percentage or the goals against. I mean, the goals against is a bit more difficult to judge, right, in the WHL, where there can be some blowouts here and there. But I think he's got what it takes to be an NHL goalie. The problem is, I think he'd be better served, and he can't necessarily do this because not only is he young, he's also a goalie and he's young, right? So if he's going to be an NHL caliber goalie, there's a chance he doesn't do that until 4 or 5 years from now, right? There's a chance he's in the AHL for a while. That's just how the goalie development curve sort of works. But I'd like to see him really work with I hope he really worked with the Flyers coaching staff and then just kind of dialed in, his sort of positional sense in the crease. And from there, I don't think there's too much more that I can see visually that I'm very, upset with. I think he's got what it takes to be an NHL goalie. It's just so far down the line. He's not like Zevragin, right? Like where he's playing as men. He's playing in the KHL. He's still in the WHL, excuse me. He's not playing against men. He's not playing at the highest level possible where he currently is at, right? So it's harder to see. He'll have a longer development curve than guys like I think than guys like Zavragin, Kolosov, or Fedotov took a while, but still. And yeah, I am very intrigued as to what I'm going to see this year from him, and I think that the World Juniors could be a coming out party for him for the rest of, you know, the hockey world if he can show out when he gets a chance, if he gets the chance.
Yeah, I think he's battling basically like the Sabres prospect like Scott Rascliffe and Carter George, the Kings prospect that was just drafted. Like I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a couple Canadian goalies that are kind of in the pipeline and key prospects, like drafted as high as Bjornsson in the second round. But yeah, just even looking at Carson's stats last year among draft plus one goalies in the WHL, he has the second highest save percentage. So 907 you don't think is like a whole lot, but he was just under Jackson Unger from Moose Jaw. Obviously the worst team in the WHL, I believe. So he had to make a bunch of saves, but he had a 908, so just 1 point below, and that was Carson. So like I think contextually, obviously older goalies play better. So I think understanding that and seeing where Bjarnason is at the end of this season, I think it's going to tell a lot. And especially that I'm glad that will be his last junior season, and then he gets to go to the AHL, establish himself there, and then kind of make that step. Like I mentioned, next couple guys, I believe there's 5. Just gonna go through quick, little lightning round. Maddie, impressions on Devin Kaplan.
Um, I mean, I think this is kind of like the year that he really needs to take a big step forward. He's been kind of retooling his game, trying to figure out the power forward thing, but we haven't seen that actually manifesting in goals and points scored yet. Granted, he's been a little bit buried in the U's lineup. Hopefully, that is not the case this year. But yeah, we'll see. I think this is going to be a big year for him, though, and that team should be pretty good. So
Yeah, like he's 6'3", 201 pounds, heading into his junior year at Boston. 23 points is 37 games last year as a depth player, and now he's wearing the A. He's definitely going to get, I think, more opportunity and hopefully more production from there. Next is Alexis Grandon. Jacob, what do you think about him obviously making a little bit of a splash in the AHL last year? Scored a little bit of points, 5 goals, 17 games, I believe. What do you kind of want to see him out of his first full AHL season?
Well, I think he's going to have a good chance to just sort of move his way up the lineup, right? Like, I don't think anything in Lehigh is necessarily set in stone on forward, right? Like, you know, guys like Denoyer, who haven't necessarily had the best time last season. I mean, if he gets off to a hot start in the AHL, I mean, he can elevate himself up the lineup and then go from there. I mean, I think he's got a good game. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he translates that to a full AHL season, you know, that full grind. But yeah, I think just wait and see in the AHL season, see if he jumps up the lineup, see if he gets some power play time or something like that, you know, anywhere around there. But yeah, I think it's just wait and see if he gets a full quality season. If he can replicate those numbers over a full year, I think we'll have a much different discussion next year surrounding him.
yeah, he's got to get out of Lappy's doghouse, though. Is
How did
the problem?
Is
I'm
he
not
just
gonna say
like
anything.
not physical enough? Like, does he not want to fight people?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, part of it, not like the fighting necessarily, but
Well,
like
yeah.
he was shying away from physical contact a little bit, like making some mistakes with the puck, that Lappy didn't really like. But it's like, man, he was 19 years old in the AHL, and you got to let him make his mistakes. The team was terrible at that point.
5'9", $176 at 19 in the AHL.
Yeah,
He should have blocked the shot with his cranium, and then it would have got him up the lineup, I guess. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, but he was generating a ton of chances for them when they really needed it. But like, I don't know. It just got to a point where he wasn't going to play him, and they had to send him back to junior. But yeah, so he's gonna he's gonna make an impression this year. But I really, really like him. I'm really high on him, and I'm excited to see what he
I
can
think
do.
the Phantoms have a lot of interesting players, honestly. Like more than last year for sure, and then years in the past, like since COVID and before that,
Yeah.
maybe since like Zayd Wisdom and Tyson was on the team. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a lot of like players trying to fit into that top 9. Yeah, and then let's quickly just go down the list. Alex Yernick, he's playing in the Allsvenskan. He's 19. It's very good. It's going to be a little bit interesting because he's playing on a kind of crap team 4 points in 5 games so far. Jacob, what do you kind of want to see from him? You don't even have to give an impression. It's Alex Yernick, but
Score a point per game,
perfect.
and then get back to the actual league. Maybe.
Stay healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
stay
yeah.
healthy.
That okay.
That's
That's the
probably
big
the
thing.
best. That's actually probably the best
Play a
takeaway
full
is to
season.
actually play a full season
Yeah.
anywhere, regardless of where it is. Just a full one would
Yeah.
be
Because
nice.
he suffered from concussions late last season,
Yeah,
and
that's a tough one.
it was pretty
Yeah.
brutal.
I was too mean.
I mean, but it's real. Like this is his year that hopefully he's like play a full season, be
Yeah,
healthy. Like it's kind of the Drysdale expectations. Be like, just play a full season, be healthy, play decent hockey, and then like next year we'll actually have expectations for you. Um, again, Maddie, Jack Berglund.
I've got nothing here. He's like a blind spot for me.
He's yeah, because it was a guy that we did really like them drafting last year. He's a big center. Um,
He's had a super weird year so far too. Like he's getting bounced around up from like
yeah,
the
he's
SHL J20 levels. Like let him stay in one spot. I don't know what they're doing over there.
maybe he should honestly get loaned to like Allsvenskan, like to an
Honestly,
Allsvenskan team,
yeah,
because if he's playing between juniors and the top level in Sweden, then maybe go down to the second level and just try to dominate physically there.
yeah. Just leave him
Um,
alone.
honestly, yeah, like he's scored. He had four games in the SHL for Fjarstad and 1 assist. Like it's I don't know what's going on. And finally, our last player, a personal guy that I want to see succeed so much. And if you're already listening to this 70 minutes in, you are a real prospect sicko. Ilya Pautov, obviously last year, 18 years old, the right winger, 100. I was just gonna say in centimeters, he's 5'10", 165 pounds. Plays in the MHL, obviously. Um, so far, he's a point per game, 10 games, 10 goal. Oh my god, 10 points. Jesus Christ, my brain's mush. And then he was around that same for last year. Jacob, I've obviously another MHL guy that pays attention to the league for money. What do you want to see from Pautov? Like, what are you
uh,
expecting him? He's still playing for the same team in the MHL. What do you kind of want to see?
well, somebody please get this guy a profile picture on Elite Prospects. First, I gotta upload that after we're done here. Second off, I don't know. I mean, it's again the MHL is so hard for me to really grasp on unless you watch the games, and then you gotta watch the games. Unless you watch the games and you really like see who's dominating and whose vision looks like leagues above, literally leagues above like their teammates. You can get points there, right? Like and still not necessarily look like a fantastic hockey player. Um, again, another smaller guy, weighs the same as me, which is not great. Very skinny over here. Very skinny over here. So that's not great. But again, 18-year-old, you know, get to the KHL would be nice if he could find a way to at
Yeah,
least like
this better than
grab,
last year.
yeah, yeah, at least grab some time up there and try and knock down that door. I mean, it'd be cool, right? So yeah, he plays for that's CSKA
That's yeah,
MHL
CSK's
team,
farm.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So yeah, I mean that's tough. That's tough. But at the same time, we'll see what happens, right? He's got shown some skills and pretty much a point per game guy in the MHL, and yeah, we'll give it a roll, see what he does. And I haven't seen a ton of Pautov, but I think he's got some high level offensive skills where he's playing. So we'll have to see if that develops more.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it on the site when he's drafted, but like he is obviously the Flyers have a connection with like Russian scouts and love to draft players out of there recently.
That's so
Um,
weird, eh?
yeah,
So
backwards a little
different.
bit. But like so they obviously because they drafted this guy in the sixth round, 173rd overall, they obviously had an inkling of like we just want this guy because he's a project, like he's a pure like we just want this guy in our system to have his rights until the end of time and just see what he becomes. Because we've seen like some of his games. So that's the general like feeling that I get is like they just want this guy before he becomes an eventual free agent and like becomes a Panarin or like a Maxim Sliplikov guy for the Islanders that they signed. That was the top KHL free agent this past year. They just want like him before he becomes something in the KHL at like 24 years old, and then he decides to come overseas. That's the feeling I get. Like if he becomes something, it'll at least be there. Maddie, you look yeah, you have something to say.
Does he have a college commitment? Am I remembering
Oh.
that correctly?
Oh,
That would be
would
interesting.
it be on his EP page?
Yes, it would be.
I don't. All I see in transactions is him going to the KHL club. Let's do some live googling. How about that?
I feel like I remember there was
Out of
something.
NCAA.
Okay, the first two results from Ilya Pautov College are Broad Street Hockey articles. So I don't know.
It's
I
just
don't
me
know.
making that up.
Yeah.
Might be you making that up. We need Cole. Can someone call Cole? I think Cole didn't he? I think that was a Cole Keller exclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
It'd
be
yeah,
fun if he did.
I don't think he does.
Actually,
that would be hilarious. It'd be so weird. How did
on Pautov's EP page, news from EP Ringside, NCAA hockey season preview. So there's a connection there. They read our minds. I don't think that's a connection, but yeah, I don't think so. Honestly, I don't see any like committed to, because that would show up like even if.
What did I say?
it'd be funny if you just showed up at Penn State or something.
It'd be very funny. Just like, yeah.
Like, oh
North
wow,
Dakota, Ilya Pautov.
Sioux Falls.
Jesus. Yeah, I don't see anything, honestly.
No, I didn't see it.
But it would show up on his EP page like a year, like 2027, 28, North Dakota. Like that's happens to the UHL players that like are committed, but they're like for so long or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That was the last player I had on my list. There are other players, obviously, that the Flyers drafted, but I don't think are very interesting to talk about. So general feeling. I guess we'll end with this. What prospect are you most excited to kind of see where they go this season? Maddie, we'll start with you. One prospect.
Gendron.
Okay.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jacob, how about you?
I think I'm gonna say Zavragin. I think there's a chance we finish this year and Zavragin's like, oh,
He's something.
no, he's really good. Like really good. Like there's a chance that Zavragin is like one of those Askarov guys. Not obviously different because once was over in North America and one isn't, but he's one of those guys like, oh wow, you got this guy here. We trade him for Mark Stone. A random guy, I don't know.
Yeah.
But somebody's just like, whoa, how'd they get this guy for random Russian dude? And then you look at it and you're like, oh my God. Yeah, I think that's definitely could happen. Obviously, it's a little packed in the goalie room right now, but I mean, more the merrier at this point, right? So I think he'll have a good year. I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably Spencer Gill. He's probably out of the junior players that have the most room to grow because Barkey and Ponk are what they are heading into the last junior years. But I think Gill really has. It'll be really more interesting to see where his season goes, especially in the queue. Like it's an interesting league, and if he comes out, because I think I read on Elite Prospects that like their season preview of the QMJHL, like they had him as their top defenseman, like in the whole league. So obviously that's like some hype going into it, and then we'll see from there. This has been Thomas Williams, Jacob Russell, and Maddie Campbell for BroadStreetHockey.com. Please subscribe to the website for just 16 cents a day. You can read all this prospect coverage, especially by Maddie, a weekly prospect preview. Anything that a prospect does, we probably write about it. And then all of our lovely Flyers content as the season gets going. Just 16 cents a day. And we have some other free stuff there, but 16 cents, it's like basically nothing. Please subscribe to our YouTube here if you're watching. Thank you. Please rate and review and listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Just search Broad Street Hockey. And yeah, check us out here on social media or whatever. Thank you, everyone, for listening about prospects for an hour and 20 minutes.
You guys are all sickos.
Freaks, I tell you, freaks.
Absolute freaks.